Hey there guys, this is Giles333 from Esports Focus, and I'm coming at you today with a review on all the Blackrock Mountain cards. So, let's get started. First of all, we have the Dark Iron Skulker, who is a 4/3 for 5 mana, and it's a rogue card. So, I think rogue cards are really strong right now, and this is actually quite high costed for a rogue card, but its effect is quite strong. It's a little under budgeted on stats for its cost, but it has quite a strong effect, so it may be played if rogue needs to get a little more control-y than it is now, but I don't think this card will be played. I don't think it's good enough to be played. Okay, next we have the Grim Patron. So the Grim Patron is a 5 mana 3/3, so it has terrible stats for its cost, but whenever this minion survives damage, summon another Grim Patron. So you summon another copy of this minion. So that is really strong because, well, it's more of a fun deck card for sure. But it is quite strong if you think about it in the way that you think of, for example, Quartermaster Muster, how it's an 8 mana combo, but you get a lot of value out of it. You get 3 3/3s and a 2/5. This is a little bit the same, where if you combo this with other cards that deal 1 damage, for example, Cruel Taskmaster, a couple Whirlwinds, you know, hitting with Deathspite second charge to proc the Whirlwind effect. When you play this card, you can actually get some value out of it. You can get at least, you know, a couple of 3/3s. If you do 2 damaging effects, you'll have 4 3/3s that some of which are damaged. So this card can create value. But I think it will mostly be a fun deck card that we'll see played with Matter Bomber, Mad Bomber, Whirlwind, Cruel Taskmaster. I think Warrior really has a lot of great enablers for this card, and so it'll be a Warrior fun deck card, it looks like. That's all I can see it doing at the moment. Next we have Hungry Dragons. So this is a 4-cost 5/6, which is quite strong. It's very powerful for its cost, and its drawback is that it summons your opponent a 1-cost minion. So on average it's going to summon them something with 1 health or something that's pretty much complete garbage. You know, there may even be times where you need a heal and you hope that they get a zombie chow. Most of the time you'll just be able to deal with whatever your opponent gets for this card, and they won't be getting much value. There are no 1-cost legendaries, so there's nothing crazy that can happen there. So pretty much this card is just very strong. It'll see play in every dragon deck. It will be a staple, and it will also see play in some non-dragon decks. I think it's that good. This card is another card that's extremely good. It's another card that triggers if you're holding a dragon. It's Blackwing Technician. It's a 3 mana 2/4, but if you're holding a dragon, it gains +1/+1 permanently, so it becomes a 3/5 when you play it into the field, and it'll be a 3/5 most of the time if you're playing a properly constructed dragon deck. So it's actually very strong, because mostly right now we have 4 mana 3/5s, and 3 mana for a 3/5 is really strong. There's not many cards that can match that power. In terms of vanilla cards, the next couple best things are Mech Warper, which is a 3 mana 3/4. 3 mana 3/4s are essentially the best you can get for 3 mana, and this is redefining that by making a 3 mana 3/5. So I think it'll be played a lot, and it also demonstrates a bit of power creep in the game. The next card we have is Rend Blackhand. So this is Battle Cry. It's a 7. First of all, it's a 7 mana 8/4 legendary, and its stats are pretty bad. If you see, it's BGHable on the one end, and on the other end, it is removable by a lot of standard removal. Pretty much 4 damage is the high end of standard removal, and it's right in there. So it's kind of bad stat wise. But its battle cry is, if you're holding a dragon, destroy a legendary minion. Now that effect is very splashy, but realistically, I think this guy is unplayably bad because essentially he's going to be hitting most of the time what a big game hunter would be hitting, but he costs 7 mana, and he's only slightly more difficult to remove, and then you don't have the remaining mana to play anything else that turn. So I think he's just a bad card. Yeah, that's about it. Axe Flinger. So this is a warrior card. It's a 4 mana 2/5, and whenever this minion takes damage, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So I think you'll also see this guy in the Grim Patron deck, where you're dealing damage to everything to get incremental benefits. You see other cards that are already in the game like that, like Armorsmith and Frothing Berserker. So this guy is along those same lines. People are commenting that his stats are bad for an aggro deck where you would want to be dealing damage to the enemy hero. However, because he has 5 health, if you think about it, it's probably going to take more than 1 instance of damage to remove him, and especially if you're dealing your own instances of damage to your creatures, he's actually going to deal possibly more damage to the enemy than if he had a high attack on the card itself. So I think he is fringe playable. Yeah, he doesn't trade with things with 3 health, which is a big issue. So I'll give him fringe playable at best. Lava Shock. So this card is pretty strong, and it's one of the couple new cards that are, in my opinion, going to make Shaman one of the stronger classes heading into Blackrock Mountain. So this card is a 2 mana, deal 2 damage. So, you know, in that vanilla sense, it's worse than Frostbolt, it's worse than Dark Bomb, it's worse than other cards that do similar things. However, it has an additional effect of unlocking your overloaded mana crystals. So this is not only going to enable new Shaman decks, such as decks that actually can play Earth Elemental nowadays. If you don't remember what that is, that's the big 7/8 for 5 mana that overloads you for 3. If you play that turn 7 with this card, you essentially can remove something after you've played your Earth Elemental, and there's no crippling downside anymore. It'll also work with future cards we're going to see coming up in the Blackrock Mountain set, and it's actually quite a strong card, because Shamans have all these crazy tempo cards that have the drawback of overload, and this card can allow you to make tempo plays without losing tempo on future turns, which is what the overload mechanic does. So I think it's very strong. and I think it'll see play in Shaman decks. Next, we have the Dragonkin Sorcerer. So, whenever you target this minion with a spell, gain +1/+1. It's a 4 mana 3/5. So, like I was saying earlier with the Technician, this is the average for a 4 mana card, is roughly a 3/5 or a 4/4 of stat allocation. And this is a 3/5 for 4, so it passes the vanilla test. And whenever you target it with a spell, it gains +1/+1, and it's also a dragon. So this card is kind of going to be played in buff decks, mostly in Priest, I think, because Priest pretty much has Power Word Shield as a default include, and also Velen's Chosen is now being played quite a lot. So that's one of the only decks I can think of that actually plays buffs that target this minion naturally, essentially. Maybe some paladins play Blessing of Kings, and this would work in Dragon Paladin as well if you're playing some buffs. But most of the other classes don't have playable buffs, or their buffs are just straight bad. So I think this card will see some play. Definitely in Dragon Priest it will be included, and that's for sure. Okay, so next up we have the Dragon Egg. So this card is a 1 mana 0/2, and whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 2/1 whelp. So it's a little bit like Nerubian Egg. It's a little bit cheaper, and the stuff you get out of it is worse. So I don't know how playable this is. It's definitely a fun card, and people will put it in decks you know, that need a 1-drop, because essentially how I see this being best played is you play it on turn 1, turn 2 you Abusive Sergeant and throw this into something, you kill off their 2-drop, and you, or if it's just a 1-power thing, this egg doesn't even die, and you get a 2/1 whelp out of the deal. So you essentially you get a 2 for 1. So it's okay. We'll have to see what people do with it. Yeah, it's hard to say with this card right now. It's hard to say. I would say it's a little below average in general. So next we have Imp Gang Boss. Great card naming. So it's a 3 mana 2/4 demon, and whenever this minion takes damage, summon a 1/1 imp. So this is obviously encouraging the Demon's Warlock deck, and it's also kind of going with the theme of the take damage cards, which is somewhat of a theme going on here with the Grim Patron, etc., and the Dragon Egg. So this card goes with that theme, where you'll play it in maybe a fun deck with some Mad Bombers, Matter Bombers. But it also, this card actually has good enough stats that it might be played in a actual constructed demon deck that's not just for fun, that's competitive. It's pretty good. Every time it takes damage, you summon a 1/1. So it's a little like 3 mana Violet Teacher, and it's definitely, I think, an improvement on Mistress of Pain. Yeah, so this card is slightly above average. I think it's going to see some play, or at least people will try to make it work.